At the dawn of the 20th century, one man held more power over the American economy than the President of the United States. He didn't run for office. He didn't command an army. He rarely even spoke in public. Yet when banks collapsed, governments called him. When markets panicked, he decided who would survive. And when the entire financial system teetered on the edge of ruin, he locked the most powerful men in America inside a library and refused to let them leave until the crisis was solved. His name was J.P. Morgan. Today, his name lives on as a global banking empire, J. Morgan Chase, handling trillions of dollars, influencing governments, shaping markets, and touching nearly every aspect of modern finance. But the real story isn't just about one man's success. It's about how private wealth became public power, how financial crises created opportunities for consolidation, and how the foundations of modern banking were built, not by governments, but by bankers themselves. This is the story of J.P. Morgan and the birth of modern banking. To understand J.P. Morgan's rise, we must go back to a time when America had no central bank, no financial safety net, and no real regulatory framework. In the early 1800s, the United States was financially fragmented. Thousands of local banks issued their own paper money. Some notes were trusted. Many were worthless. Bank failures were common. Economic crashes were routine. The federal government distrusted centralized banking, believing it threatened democracy. Presidents like Andrew Jackson destroyed early attempts at a national bank, convinced they empowered elites at the expense of ordinary citizens. But without a central authority, chaos filled the vacuum. Railroads expanded faster than regulation. Speculation outpaced savings. Credit flowed freely until it suddenly didn't. Into this volatile environment stepped a small group of financiers who understood something others didn't. Control the flow of money, and you control the economy itself. And among them, one family would rise above all others. John Pierpont Morgan was born in 1837 into privilege, but not excess. His father, Junius Spencer Morgan, was a powerful banker operating between London and New York. From an early age, J.P. Morgan was groomed for finance, educated in Europe, and trained in the mechanisms of global capital. But Morgan's true skill wasn't math or accounting. It was trust. In an era where financial statements were unreliable and fraud was rampant, Morgan built a reputation for absolute credibility. When he backed a deal, investors believed it was safe. That trust became his currency. By the late 1800s, Morgan had positioned himself at the center of America's most important industries: railroads, steel, electricity, and finance. He didn't just invest in companies. He restructured them. If a railroad was failing, Morgan didn't just lend money. He forced management changes, consolidated competitors, eliminated inefficiencies, and stabilized operations. This process became known as Morganization. It was ruthless. It was effective, and it made him indispensable. By the turn of the 20th century, J.P. Morgan's influence extended across nearly every major sector of the U.S. economy. Railroads, steel, electric power, banking. In 1901, Morgan orchestrated the creation of U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar corporation. The deal was so massive that it instantly made Morgan the most powerful financier on earth. But with power came fear. The public began to ask a dangerous question. Had one man gained too much control? Then, in 1907, the system cracked. The Panic of 1907 began with a failed attempt to corner the copper market. When the scheme collapsed, banks began to fall like dominoes. Depositors rushed to withdraw their money. Stock prices plummeted. Credit markets froze. There was no Federal Reserve, no central authority to step in, no government bailout. So the U.S. government turned to one man, J.P. Morgan. At the height of the panic, Morgan summoned the heads of America's largest banks to his library in New York. He locked the doors and refused to let them leave until they agreed to pool their resources to stabilize the system. For days, he dictated which institutions would be saved and which would be allowed to fail. His decisions stopped the panic, but they also revealed a terrifying truth. The American financial system depended on a private citizen. That realization changed history. The Panic of 1907 shocked the nation. Lawmakers realized that relying on one banker was unsustainable and dangerous. The solution was a centralized system that could act as a lender of last resort. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was born. Officially, It was designed to stabilize the economy. Unofficially, it reflected the same principles Morgan had used for decades: centralized control, coordinated credit, and elite oversight. Though J.P. Morgan died in 1913, his influence shaped the system's DNA. Many of the architects of the Federal Reserve were his former associates. Many of its principles mirrored his methods. The era of private banking dominance had evolved into institutional power. Fast forward to the 21st century. Banks are bigger than ever. Financial products are more complex, and crises still happen. In 2008, history repeated itself. Major financial institutions collapsed under the weight of excessive risk. Governments intervened. Taxpayers bore the cost. Once again, a handful of institutions were deemed too big to fail. J.P. Morgan just descended directly from J.P. Morgan's empire emerged, stronger than ever. The names have changed, the technology has advanced, but the structure remains eerily familiar. Centralized power, privatized profit, socialized risk. Throughout history, the same cycle appears. Innovation fuels rapid growth. Oversight lags behind expansion. Risk accumulates unseen. A crisis exposes systemic weakness, and then power consolidates further. Each crisis strengthens the institutions meant to prevent the next one. The paradox of modern finance is that stability often requires concentration, yet concentration creates fragility. This was true in J.P. Morgan's time. It remains true today. So what are the key takeaways from all this? First, modern banking was not designed by governments. Alone, it was shaped by private power during moments of crises. Second, financial stability has always come at the cost of consolidation, where fewer institutions hold more control. And third, every financial crisis carries the seeds of the next, because the underlying incentives rarely change. J.P. Morgan once said, "Money is not made in the buying or the selling, but in the waiting." But perhaps the deeper truth is this: the greatest power in finance doesn't come from money itself, but from controlling the system that creates it. As long as that system remains concentrated, the question remains unanswered. Who truly controls the world's money, and who pays the price when it fails? If you found this story insightful, consider subscribing for more deep explorations into the hidden mechanics of money, power, and history. And ask yourself, what would happen if the next crisis arrives tomorrow?